Ooh, ow. Ooh. Hello, everyone. Ladies and houses, boys and sheds, welcome once again to the Library of Horror Hotel. Let's get right into our mask discussion today as we continue in our appreciation of the fine art of Halloween masks here on Creepy Cheapies. You know, there has to be a best and worst of everything that exists, right? I mean, somewhere, at some point in history, there had to be the best spark plug ever manufactured. You know, there had to be such a thing. There had to be the worst baseball bat ever manufactured. Well, there have been an awful lot of skull masks and a lot of awful skull masks over the years because the skull is pretty much the ultimate symbol of Halloween and all things spooky, just simplified to a single icon. I think it would be a skull. I would have to say, out of all the skulls that have been made, the best, the overall best skull is probably gonna be the Don Post Studios classic skull. And I say that knowing that everybody might not love it as much as some of the collectors do, but I would put to you that many masks have been influenced by it. It was in production for an unbelievably long time. I believe it first came out around the year 1967. And you might say, oh, what's the difference? A skull is a skull is a skull, right? But there's something uniquely distinctive and dramatic and memorable about the classic Don Post skull. It looks sort of ironically friendly and innocent, and maybe even like it's too cold and its teeth would be chattering. Always looks a bit like he's shivering to me. But there have been tons of other skull masks, starting with those little cheap, remember the little thin plastic face masks for children that kids always got at Halloween that looked like a skull, or anything else, but there were a lot of skulls. You know, the little thin plastic with the holes and the rubber band across the back that would snap off the back of the kid's head as soon as they put the mask on. Those were made famous by companies like Collegeville and Ben Cooper, and later were produced by other companies, including Ruby's. And there have been other skull masks in other styles by such companies as pretty much any you could name. There have even been other skulls by Don Post Studios, apart from the one that I refer to as the classic. There have been skull masks by, oh my goodness, Travelers and Be Something Studio, and later when they became Zagoni, Savage Eye, Death Studios, Ruby's, American Mask and Novelty, Distortions, just any mask company you can name has probably done a skull or two because it's always a very popular thing. But I think the best one is the Don Post skull. Now here's the exciting thing is after all these years, there's a version out now from the creeps at Trick or Treat Studio. Too bad I can't find it. There it is. What do you know? I did find it. It looks a lot like this. And this is the classic Don Post skull that was in production for many years with slight variation. Now, sometimes you can look at the old masks and guess about what year they were made. The original version had this bar on the back that said 1967, which led to people believing they had 1967 skull masks for many years after that, and you'd see them on eBay as this is a skull mask from 1967, but it isn't really that old because Don Post didn't update that date on the back of the mask every single year. They did update it in 1976, so some of them have 1976 on the back, and these were made available in several different versions over the years. Originally, I believe the first version was vinyl, dark vinyl, stipple painted or sponge painted. If you don't know, that just means you take a piece of sponge, stipple sponge, or a piece of foam rubber, and I do this all the time, dip it in the paint and dab it onto the darker color underneath. So if they would make these out of black, or in the case of one I had when I was a kid, super dark brown, almost like a, do you ever have a dark chocolate bar, darker than a regular Hershey bar, you know, a dark chocolate, that kind of color, stippled over with white, or sort of an off-white, kind of a cream yellowy tan kind of color. And then there was the glow-in-the-dark version. This monstrosity came out supposed to be in time for Halloween of 2024, but nobody could really get their hands on one that quickly. But they did come out in 2025 from Trick or Treat. And the awesome thing about this is it's just like the old Don Post skull in as much as it's made of vinyl. And if it wasn't vinyl, could I do this? Could I do this? Could I do this? Could I do this? It's made of black vinyl, which means it even smells like the old masks when you're wearing it or holding it, or just have a good memory for smells from long ago. Now, the skull mask was available in latex for quite a while too. The latex versions from Don Post never looked as nice as the vinyl ones. The vinyl ones were sort of stiff and heavy duty and held their shape well. And of course, one thing wonderful about any skull mask, if it's a good one, is that you can also, it can do double duty. You can also use it as a prop. You can put it on the shelf or on the ground in your scene where there's a horrible man-eating monster in a cave or something, or you can use it as decor. It would look great on a shelf in La Biblioteca, anywhere here, you see. So I always like skulls because they also double as props. Now, this particular skull picture, get it? Skull. Yeah, I thought that would sound a lot funnier when I started to say it just then. You got any more swell jokes you want to slow things down with? No, sorry. The original version here was created, I believe, by Pat Newman. None other than Pat Newman. And over the years, minor changes were made. It was sold, there was a red version called the Vermilion Skull for a while. There were even several versions of that. I had one when I was a kid that was made of pink vinyl and was painted red. That's what it looked like. Unfortunately, the red paint had a tendency to peel off pretty badly, like a t-shirt iron-on back then. Did you ever see one of those where you just start peeling and you're like, uh-oh, oh, it's all coming off? I don't think that's going to happen with this guy, but this, the reason this tag is on here for you, this is part of the Glow and Ghoulies line, and if you look closely at that ever-loving tag, yeah, see where it says Glow and Ghoulies? That's one of the things that makes this particular mask exciting in the eyes of collectors, is that tag, because the picture and even the questionably chosen font, which had a C that looked an awful lot like a G and led a lot of people to think it said Clown Ghoulies back in the day. Back in the late 1970s, the Glow and Ghoulies line was a line of vinyl masks that glowed in the dark. And this one does. It's one of those, you know, if you charge it up, put it in this regular bright light for a while, and then turn out the lights, he glows. What could be cooler than a glow-in-the-dark skull mask? Not many things. A few perhaps, not that many could be cooler. And the great thing is this looks just like the old vinyl skull masks. And even as a bonus, I'm not sure what led to this decision, but I think it's a good one. There's a clear plastic liner in there. I wonder if I could get it out without destroying anything. Let's find out, shall we? There's a clear plastic liner in there, in the manner of like the great French César masks used to have, that you can stick in there. You want to take this out when you're wearing it, if you enjoy breathing, okay? This goes inside, and then when the mask is on display, you don't have to worry about getting smushed or flattened or bent out of shape. And don't go getting all bent out of shape. Come on. Because you can stick this inside there. But again, do take it out if you're going to wear the mask. Okay? And this particular guy was available in some other variations. I actually had one 1,000,000 years ago. Don't question me. It was 1,000,000 years ago. I did the math. You can't argue. 1,000,000 years ago, I had one that was made of glow-in-the-dark vinyl and had barely any paint on it at all, just a little black here and there. Now, that version is also coming out from Trick or Treat for 2024-25. Was supposed to be 24, but actually didn't show up till 25. So we may talk about that one another time soon. But this one has the black vinyl with the cool sponge painted finish, and it's large, which is a complaint I had about some of the Don Post latex ones, was that some of them shrank up a bit. I guess shrank down a bit would be a better way to say that, wouldn't it? They were too small. They were a bit on the small side. Some of them were just painted with a little bit of black and barely any detail, and they weren't that exciting. Now, if you think this looks familiar, other than having seen it, you know, at your local Halloween store back when dinosaurs ruled the earth or some such thing, it's most famous for its appearance in the movie Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. In which, now it's not supposed to be, if you haven't seen that movie, it's not supposed to be a living skeleton. It's supposed to be a mask. And they shot parts of the movie at Don Post Studios, and you see like bins of masks, and you see these skeleton masks. So it's supposed to be a mask. And if you never saw that, you might also have seen it in other movies that don't make any sense, including The Redeemer, a really strange one from, I believe, the late 70s. Was that when The Redeemer came out? Yeah, he was in that, in a scene where a guy is wearing this and wearing a black cloak and smashing up against a chain link fence with a big scythe like an idiot, because that's not going to really tear down a chain link fence, you know. But he shows up in The Redeemer, and The Redeemer was also released under the title Class Reunion Massacre. No, not Slaughter High. This one was called Class Reunion Massacre on VHS tape back in the 80s, and actually had artwork with a representation of the Don Post skull on the VHS box, and going back even farther than that. My goodness me. You may have seen, but I doubt it, a movie from 1965 called House of the Black Death, also known under the title Blood of the Man Devil. I'm not kidding. You think I'm making this stuff up? No, no. House of the Black Death, aka Blood of the Man Devil, is the only movie I've ever seen in which Lon Chaney and John Carradine play rival sorcerers, like rival evil warlocks. And at the big finale, and I'm pretty sure I'm not spoiling anything for anybody because you'll be asleep long before it ends. The big finale of the movie, John Carradine kills Lon Chaney by turning him into a Don Post skull mask. And now I know what nobody out there is thinking, so I'll address it. I did say the movie was from 1965, and I did say earlier that I didn't think the skull came along until 1967. But here's the thing about that. The film wasn't finished, and according to some sources, didn't get released to like drive-in theater circuits and late-night TV broadcasts until as late as 1971. Which means someone could have added the shot of, oh look, Lon Chaney is dead, he's turned into a Don Post skull mask. Someone could have added that at some point between 1967 and 71. So if you haven't seen that one, you haven't missed much, but it is unique. Now, just for fun, I'm going to show you also, this is another recent Trick or Treat Studios release, but this one is the Halloween 3 edition, and it's made of latex, which we will show you right there, made of good old latex rather than vinyl, and is painted black and then is sponge painted with white over that. And one way you can identify this, if it doesn't have the Halloween 3 tag on there, they say on the back, Halloween 3, blah, 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 blah. There's an extra little plate on there. And, of course, the silver shamrock is a little dingus that's glued on to the masks to designate and you know, make sure you know it's that edition. So you can get the Halloween 3 edition or a plain Don Post reproduction edition, also from Trick or Treat. I am liking the vinyl better. I'm liking the vinyl better. Now, I have an old one here, another enchanting and beautiful thing. Yes, sir. Look at this beautiful thing. What is it? This is an ancient one from way back in the 70s. That candle getting off a lot of smoke today. This one is actually from the 70s, and it's a bit dirty. It's quite old. It is made, as I mentioned before, of the black vinyl, and it's thick and sturdy. And this one is from the late 70s. Now, the Glow in Ghoulies line included a lot of other glow-in-the-dark masks of varying degrees of creepiness and funniness. Some of them were more silly than scary, but we'll talk more about those in the future. But this is an old one from back in the day, and this is the beautiful, beautiful Trick or Treat edition from 2025. Now these will only set you back like 45, 50 bucks. I think well worth it to have a skull that, for one thing, is the classic, all-time, everybody's favorite classic skull image as masks go, and is vinyl, which means it's not made of latex that's going to rot and deteriorate in a few years. It's nice, sturdy stuff, and it really does glow in the dark. And I would go to the trouble to turn out the lights and all that stuff and show you, except you're probably tired of looking at me and listening to me by this time. So I think it's time we called it a night until our next episode of Creepy Cheapies, during which you'll have time to snag, I hope, one of these very collectible, very desirable glow-in-the-dark vinyl skull masks as released by Trick or Treat. Downpost reissue. Super cool for collectors. And until next time, remember, don't forget to remember what you forgot not to remember not to forget last time.